Water is a privilege, but clean water, even more so. Maybe let's start with being able to access clean water no matter where you live. In today's episode, we are going to cover how technology has made access to clean water cheaper and more convenient. We are yet to solve the water crisis in the world, but we hope that the advancement in technology is a starting point to solve the water crisis and thereby make water accessible and clean for everyone, including the next 500 million.
The next 500 million, or the NHB, are the core of this podcast. They represent the second big wave of internet users in India, hence the term next. We define them as the cohort of 500 million first-time internet users that have come online via their mobile phones in 5 years from 2018 to 2022. From a demographic standpoint, they are mainly from the bottom 60% of India's income distribution. They are owners of small businesses like beauty salons and kirana shops, and also blue-collar workers, domestic workers, security guards, etc. They are building a greater comfort with tech and represent the hustle and ambition of an aspiring India. I'm Nivedita, an ex-engineer turned comedian and writer.
And I'm Utsav, who also is unsurprisingly an ex-engineer turned market researcher, traveler, and podcaster.
In today's episode, we tell you how smartphones have made clean water cheaper and easier to access than ever before. So I currently boil my water. I know this is very old school at a time where everyone's using water purifiers, but a water purifier salesman is the one who once told me that the water in Mumbai does not need a purifier because it's pretty good on its own. In fact, he said RO purifiers can remove essential minerals from the water.
Doesn't really sound like a good salesman to me, but it is true. Sometimes the water in India is good enough to drink without any special purification. It's probably only when you have hard water that you need a purifier. I have one. I don't have the patience to boil water, but maybe we'll find an alternative for you in this episode.
Yeah, maybe I will. We're going to be exploring just that in today's episode.
Let's get right to it then. I looked it up and found out as much as a quarter of the world's population now faces severe water scarcity at least once a month out of the year. According to predictions by the United Nations and the World Bank, drought could put up to 700 million people at risk of displacement by 2030.
This problem is already surfacing in India's cities. Out of the top 50 most densely populated cities in the world, 22 of them are in India. This means that more and more people are competing for the already stretched water resources. Listen to Jaya, who lives in the Mumbai suburb of Khar West. She lives in a chawl which is typically low-quality housing for people from lower income backgrounds. And this is what she has to say.
So we get water only twice a day, once at 6 a.m. and then at 5 p.m. To make sure that we have sufficient water, we have to go and fill it both the times.
And the water shortage story is not limited to densely populated cities only. It's become a challenge across the hinterland as well. A critically acclaimed 2017 film, Kadvi Hawa, which means bitter wind, tackles this subject. The film is inspired by true events from the drought-prone Bundelkhand region. It showcases how the community of Mahua is affected by a lack of rainfall, barren soil, agricultural failure, and climate change. We spoke to Nitasha Nair. Currently a consultant, she graduated from Columbia University specializing in energy and environmental policy. In the past, she has worked at the International Water Management Institute, and this is what she had to say about the water situation in India.
According to a Niti Aayog report, India has about 17 to 18% of world population, but only 4% of its water resources. So it's one of the most water-stressed countries in the world. And the report actually goes on to say that nearly 70% of our water is contaminated. And that is a sobering fact. We are highly dependent on our monsoons and groundwater systems. And both of these are under major stress. And climate change is further exacerbating this access to water by adding multiple degrees of uncertainty and variability. And take, for example, the increasing frequency and intensity of floods and droughts that we are seeing in the country.
Speaking of floods and droughts, in 2019, Chennai hit what it called Day Zero. All its main reservoirs ran dry, forcing the government to truck in drinking water. People stood in lines for hours to fill containers, water tankers were hijacked, and violence erupted in some neighborhoods.
I must confess, I did not know that Chennai had it this bad.
It did, and Bangalore is not better off. May I remind you of the infamous water tank mafia, a nexus of thugs, local politicians, and a few water department employees run a parallel and private water supply network, which supplies water to majority of the newer areas of the city.
Oh, it does. That is how my apartment complex gets water. But even then, the quality of water is poor. The water is often muddy and has a high degree of TDS or total dissolved solids.
This is a problem consistent across India's cities. Listen to Anshul Gautam, who runs a small shop that provides services like money transfer and mobile recharges, talk about this.
हम लोग भर के रख लेते हैं कैन में.
You know, we cannot drink the water directly supplied to us. We have to first let the water settle down in a can so that all the impurities are at the bottom, post which we filter it with a cloth and store it in an earthen pot.
Anshul does not have a water purifier, and he is not alone. People in India have resorted to multiple methods in their bid to have safe drinking water. Narendra Shukla, who is the driver, has resorted to one of the oldest and easiest methods.
Boil करके हम मटके में डालते हैं.
I don't have a fridge or a water purifier. We boil our water and then let it cool. The water is supplied by the city, and we always prefer to boil it before drinking.
I'd agree with Narendra. I would not drink tap water without boiling it first. Luckily, I'm privileged enough to be able to afford a water purifier. I drink the cleanest water possible.
But there is a problem. All water purifiers have similar solutions: RO, UV, copper purification, or some combination of these. It's the typical if you have a hammer, everything is a nail problem.
Not really seeing the problem here. Wouldn't you want your water to be as pure as possible?
Yes, but in a country as diverse as India, water isn't the same everywhere. Even parts of the same city have different water.
Oh, I see. The areas of Old Bangalore generally have much better water than where I live.
Yes, but what most of us don't realize is that only 10% of India has water purifiers. Many others rely on water cans, which are not as pure as you think. The source of water is often unknown, and a 2017 study by the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, warns that most of the samples of canned water tested in the city do not have the necessary minerals. They are, in fact, dangerous to one's health and, in some cases, carcinogenic. Additionally, water contamination is a significant problem. I'll let Natasha shed more light on this.
Right. So one of the major contributors to pollution is, just contamination by fecal matter. So it's our waste which is flowing into the rivers unfiltered and unchecked. It is possible to do this at a large scale where you have STPs or sewage treatment plants which treat the water before or treat the waste and the sewage waste essentially before it enters the river. Again, sewage treatment plants have their own challenges because they are big infrastructure initiatives which take a lot of manpower effort to actually manage, construct, and operate. There are probably decentralized solutions which need more innovative thinking. How do you manage your sewage water? How do you manage your wastewater entering into systems, river systems without being treated? And that's where I think the challenge and the next bit of innovation needs to focus on.
So what exactly does this innovation look like? Who is solving the problem of last mile clean drinking water?
Someone is. But for more on that, we will be back after a short break. Welcome back to Smartphone Nation. We were talking about who is solving the problem of customized clean drinking water. Let me introduce you to Manas Ranjan Hota, the co-founder of DrinkPrime. He experienced the clean water problem as a 25-year-old at his first job in sales. Neither he nor his roommate invested in a water purifier, and so they relied on water cans. But the water cans were often dirty on the outside, had floating particles on the inside, and delivery was erratic. If you ran out of water at 11 p.m., you were effectively going to sleep thirsty because the neighborhood shop delivering water was already shut.
This I can completely relate to because I too relied on water cans during the early days of my career in Chennai.
Yes, so Manas and his roommate Vijayendra Reddy, who happens to be a co-founder too, decided to do something about this and started DrinkPrime. But before we understand how the company is solving urban India's water problem, there is something rather interesting we need to know.
I wonder what it is because I've heard that sometimes the employees are so happy that they tell everyone about the company they work at and recommend it to their peers. That's a nice thing.
Pretty close. Here, their customers become their employees.
Wait, what?
Yes, when we first got in touch with them, we spoke to Rachel, and she was so excited to tell us how DrinkPrime made life easier for her and how aligned she was with their goal. She isn't the only one either. Apparently, there are several employees at DrinkPrime that were customers first. But here is Rachel, who is completing 2 years at DrinkPrime, now telling us how she got here.
So I worked with a few organizations before I joined DrinkPrime. But after I worked with those organizations, I realized unless and until I'm happy or I can relate to the product or there's something I'm aligned to the mission, there should be something in it that I'm aligned with to sort of, be a part of that, right? I mean, because I'm a part of branding and communication. So it's a very core, it's the core of the organization to some extent. So for me, that was very important. And when I was switching organizations and I saw that DrinkPrime was hiring and I said, okay, I love this product when I was using it. At that point, I did not use it. And I was like, I'm very aligned to the mission because I know how difficult it is to get water cans delivered and to get it up 4 floors. And I didn't even have a lift at that point. It's so horrible. I was like, no, this is something I want to be a part of. I want to be a part of this journey and I want to see what difference I can make in this.
Okay, I really need to know more about DrinkPrime now. Also, considering we already have water purifiers, how are they doing things differently? I was able to ask Manas this, and here's what he had to say.
When we wanted to get into the space, we thought that, water purifiers has been around for ages, like you pointed out, and there has been large brands that are there, brands that we all associate with. But when you look at the penetration numbers, right, 10% homes have a water purifier versus a 70% penetration of a TV set and a 50% penetration of a refrigerator. While this bottled water industry, it was really non-existent till about 2005, 2006. And within the last 10 years, when we started 2016, right, within the 10 years, it has grown almost to 3x the size of the water purifier industry. Now, why is that? We wanted to find out a little bit. And few reasons is, water purifier, the way that it has been typically sold, marketed, produced, right, is typically catered to a very elite, urban Indian, upper middle class sort of audience.
I'll admit, on second thoughts, outside of my privileged circle, I've not seen most people have water purifiers.
But Manas is questioning the premise of owning a water purifier itself. Here he is again.
Most of these water purifier companies look at a water purifier as an appliance, while in reality, a water purifier is more of a utility than an appliance. I'll give you a simple example. Let us say you go to any well-known brand. They would have 2 models of water purifier. One would be maybe priced at 25,000. The second would be priced at 6,000-7,000. One would have some 3, 4, 5 stages of purification. The second would have 7, 8 stages of purification. But as a consumer, you are only bothered about the output. If you buy a higher stage purification water purifier, and if I buy a lower stage purification water purifier, end of the day, both of us get access to safe, clean and healthy drinking water. That's all that we care about. And the intrinsic value that we derive from, let's say, a larger TV or a larger fridge or stuff like that is not there with the higher spec water purifier as such. And the industry is sort of catered to in a way that one size fits all sort of a solution.
This episode is changing my views about water fundamentally. Because using a water purifier is annoying in one single way. First, buy a 15,000 rupee water purifier and then pay 5,000 rupees every year for annual maintenance and service.
This maintenance cost is exactly what Rachel says made DrinkPrime stand out as compared to other water purifier brands.
As a child, I was never really aware of the purchase cost because the water purifier existed even before I was born. But I was very aware of the annual maintenance cost because even as I grew up, even when we changed water purifiers, the annual maintenance cost never really went down. It was always super high. That was one point that I always remembered. And I very well remember times when the filters are, you have to replace the filters, but then the technician has not visited. That can get irritating. And I remember my mom calling the technician days after days, and then they end up, at some point they end up there and they help you and that's primary, and that's after paying all the annual maintenance costs, right? So when I got DrinkPrime, that's one of the key things that I saw. And when I got DrinkPrime, I had just started working and I really didn't want to spend a lot of money on purchasing a water purifier. Was way out of the question. That's why I was using water cans, because one thing is I didn't want to go through understanding all the technology and jargons that the industry spoke about. Second thing was the annual maintenance cost it's recurring, and you're just going on paying for an appliance that's getting old, and you have to change at some point, but you still have to maintain it because you need water. That was unfair. And the technician stuff just gets worse when you move out to a place like Bangalore because traffic is horrible. There's way too many people using the machine. So there's nothing that's really, you're spending money and you're not getting enough. That's what I said. But when it came to DrinkPrime, one thing is they offered lifetime maintenance for free, which means you rent the purifier, it's maintained. And by maintenance, they also include filter changes. There's no additional cost for filter.
And that's not all. Remember the discussion about water quality being different everywhere? Here is Manas talking about addressing that challenge.
So for us to be able to customize it properly, right, we need to understand what is the water quality of your area. If I know what is the water quality of area and what is the pattern with which it changes, because in Bangalore also, the water quality does change significantly from season to season. In rainy seasons, all of us get muddy water through the tap, while in winter, the water quality is generally a little better. In summers, we normally get a little bit more harder water. So yeah, number one, it changes from area to area. Number two, it changes from season to season. Now, when you ask for a subscription in Bangalore, right, if you stay in one of those apartment complexes or gated societies in Bangalore, highly likely that anywhere between 5 to 50 people of your apartment complex already have a DrinkPrime subscription, which means we already know your water quality even before you approach us. You just need to give us your address, and our algorithm would be able to pull out what has been the water quality sort of variance in your area. And depending on that, we are able to customize the water purifier.
This is it. I've seen it all. Algorithms determining what kind of water I will be drinking. But it makes so much sense to think about water quality by area and seasons. Because even within the same city, water sources can be very different. And love the idea of a subscription service. But since this podcast is about the next 500 million, we did ask Manas what DrinkPrime is doing to make clean water possible for everybody. Here's Manas again.
We are experimenting with community-driven water purification models. A good example of that is, and our community itself is supporting that. A good example of that is, let us say, government schools today. Government schools do not have access to clean drinking water, and children, as you know, are the future of our country. A few months back, we went to a community and asked them to open up or donate their water. I mean, all of our DrinkPrime subscribers have access. I mean, most of them have excess water or can actually buy a higher pack and donate 100 liters of water through that. And through that initiative, today we support more than 20 government schools. It's still a small number, but it's growing very rapidly. That's something that I'm extremely proud of.
We spoke to Abhiroop Sarkar, an investor from Omidyar Network India, an investment firm that focuses on impact, on what made him believe and invest in DrinkPrime.
I think three things. One is just the nature of the problem itself. Access to high quality drinking water for Indian households is an unsolved issue, right? It's a challenge with significant repercussions, right? Which people only get to know over a period of time, right? And then still, I don't know if people realize, because it's not instant gratification, right? Like a television or smartphone is instant gratification. Indian households are willing to spend there, but nobody's willing to spend on money, even if like it's half of a typical smartphone on high quality drinking water. I think that's a big problem that we need to solve. And then I think the way to solve it is taking a different business model approach, right? And we were looking for something like this. What can work? We don't want to solve this problem with 20-liter cans, creating unnecessary plastic usage, low quality water, inconvenience. We don't want to see an India, where this is something that is becoming more and more prevalent over a period of time. We want to give them a solution which actually makes sense, which is affordable, is convenient, is something that people would love, and would be a no-brainer solution.
As we work towards a more sustainable future where water is accessible to everyone, here's to a future where we can provide clean water solutions to everyone too. Thank you for tuning into Smartphone Nation. I'm Utsav.
And I am Nivedita. This was Smartphone Nation. Tune in next week for another story on how the next 500 million are shaping their future online. If you like our show, please subscribe to the Smartphone Nation YouTube channel. Don't forget to rate and review us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Share this episode with your friends as it helps the show reach more people.
You can listen and subscribe to Smartphone Nation on the IVM Podcasts app or wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is also available in Hindi and Tamil. A special thanks to Omidyar Network India for making this season possible. To know how ONI is partnering with bold and purpose-driven entrepreneurs who are working to improve the lives of India's next half billion, visit omidyarnetwork.in. Tell us what you think of the show. You can find our hosts on Twitter and Instagram. Utsav can be found on the Instagram ID at YWeTravel42. You can reach out to Nivedita on Instagram at niv.prakasam. You can follow IVM on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at the ID at IVM Podcasts.
IVM